There we go. All right. Whoa. I don't know where the sound is coming out of in the laptop, but that's interesting. Oh, probably this one right here. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Now we don't have to hear ourselves. All right. Well, welcome to the Junior Beast Live. My name's Keenan, as always, joined by Mohammed. It's weird doing this live this time, but now everybody gets to see all the screw ups that we do when we do these things. So, anyway, welcome. We are sitting inside the Shane Holmes Arena in Genesis Place as we get set in just over 2 hours' time for the first opening face-off of the Larry Bishop Memorial Cup. Um, well, I say let's start over in the East. Let's kind of cover the Winnipeg Blizzard and their path.
So, I mean, the Blizzard had that de facto bye because they and the Kings had that first round off because they only had three teams in their division. So, Saskatoon missed the playoffs. They had to wait a week to start their series, and it was the Blizzard taking for a second year in a row, walking into Regina and defeating the Kings 2-0. They win games 1 and 2. Game one was a little bit different than game two. Game one was a little bit of a blowout. They kind of got up early and didn't really let the Kings have too much life. And in the second game, the Kings led for much of it, and then in a big third period by the Blizzard allowed them to take that 5-4. And so I don't know. There wasn't much that I was able to catch of that series, but I wasn't too shocked. What did you take from that Eastern Division final?
That Eastern Division final was very different to me, and I agree. The two games felt. Microphone keeps dying here. Let me see if I can switch over to our other one real quick. Sorry, the difficulties of doing this live. All right, let's see if microphone two actually lasts for a little bit longer here. Yeah, no, I felt it was a very different series, night and day, like you were saying. No one seemed to be able to kind of take over the other, and it was just such a weird series. Just all in all. Kudos to the Blizzard though for getting back here at the Larry Bishop. Our tech producer Eric. Eric, my microphone is not working. We'll get Eric to give us some on-the-fly technical difficulties. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to put them in chat, and we will happily answer those as we go through the Junior Beast Live. Just gonna swap over here. We'll be right back here. All right, we are back. We got a working mic this time, so thank you to our tech producer Eric for quickly doing that on the fly. So, so on the topic of the Blizzard, these are some. So their stats looking back at the regular season: 211 goals for, 153 goals against, a plus 58 goal differential, and 376 penalty minutes, which I believe actually leads all teams that are in this tournament. They're actually tied with the Mavericks coming into this tournament. How do you see the penalties affecting the tournament, essentially, especially with like heavy hitting power play teams? Like you got like the Shamrocks 19-1-0, just an almost flawless year this year, and then the Rebels seem to be able to find ways to connect on the power plays and stuff like that. So what do you see with high penalty minute teams coming into this tourney?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because the first thing that comes to mind, at least for me, is that if it's going to be a tournament, I was talking about this with someone last night, if it's a tournament with a lot of penalties and the refs are calling a lot of things and cracking down on a bunch, then that could favor a team like the Shamrocks, whose special teams really excel. Their power play every year is really strong. And if they're letting a lot of things go, then that could sway to a team like the Rebels, who are very physical and like to take your time and space away. So I think that's definitely going to have a factor or play a factor. How much of a factor it's impossible to try to quantify, but I definitely think that could be something that we're talking about as the tournament moves along.
And I know the Blizzard last year, I think they were in the same position last year where they went against Regina and won that series in 2, I'm pretty sure, from second place. So, and the Blizzard made it all the way to the finals last year. So curious to see how the Blizzard come into this tournament as the weekend rolls through. Moving on to the north, the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels coming into this tournament, their first appearance since 2019 in this tournament. Mo, where do you see the Rebels stacking up against this kind of competition? Like, you got guys that are fresh out of this tournament, like the Blizzard and the Shamrocks both making it last year, and the Silvertips only another year removed out of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, one thing before I forget to mention this is, you mentioned 2019. That tournament, it's essentially the exact same field with Red Deer being swapped out from Mountain View, and Mountain View's coach was Red Deer's coach in 2019, Trey Christensen. So for anybody at home that is sort of trying to figure out what to expect, mostly largely different players. But there are some commonalities here. These are teams that have been here. When you look at the Blizzard, they make this tournament almost every year. I think they missed it once. The very first year it went to this format, they missed in 2014. Been here ever since. The Rebels have been here a few times now, or second time anyway. Shamrocks here a lot, 6 times I believe. The Silvertips, this is their second or third time, so third time I believe. So these teams do have some experience playing in this tournament, and it's a lot of games that are kind of compacted into a short time span, and injuries and fatigue and things like that always play a role. So these teams that like the Shamrocks, like the Blizzard, have been here a little bit more, maybe that's an advantage. I don't know. But 2019, if you want to get maybe a little bit of a primer on what might take place here, maybe you can gather some signs or some things to come with a lot of these teams, or almost all of these teams, having been playing each other right before COVID.
And the Rebels coming into this tournament on a very different kind of path, having beat the Warriors for first in the North. Right near the end of the year, they just absolutely soared, and the Warriors just couldn't quite string enough wins together. Do you think the Warriors not being here this year is a testament to just a changing player core, or what do you consider that? Because the Rebels, I mean, it's been a little bit for them.
Yeah, I think the North Final was just it sounds simple, but it was one team wanted it like blood, and the other one looked like they were ready to go home and maybe go to the lake. That series, I don't know if I ever remember a couple of games playing out the way those did, where it just was evident from the jump that one team, it mattered, just simply mattered way more to them. Loose balls they owned, the middle of the floor, both defensively and offensively, they owned. They were just way more physical, way more engaged, right from the jump. They really set the tone on how they wanted to have that series play. And they were really aggressive. It took the time and space of the Warriors away. And the best sort of comparison that I could make or analogy I could make is when I was a kid, I was always very skilled, but I was small and very physically behind. And teams would want to jump on me, right? They wouldn't want to give me time and space to make plays. And that's what the Warriors looked like. They looked like that kid that was very skilled, but just a little bit smaller, a little slower. And the Rebels took their time and space away, and they did it very well. And they were full marks. McGillivray was really good, especially in the first game. He made a difference. Warriors goaltending wasn't the greatest. There's a lot of things you could point to, but the Rebels, at the end of the day, they said we're winning this year, and that was the end of it. And the Warriors looked like they were content with having won last year, and maybe a little bit of fatigue setting in on that roster.
Yeah. And interesting to note is the Rebels are the only team in this tournament that carry 3 goaltenders. Everyone else carries 2, so that could be something to watch as the tournament rolls on. Fort Saskatchewan Rebels, looking at their regular season, plus 58 goal differential, 373 penalty minutes. So also on the higher end there, ending up in the North Final, 24 goals for, 17 against.
And the also thing about the Rebels to remember is that they have a lot of guys that can play both ends of the floor very well. Guys that can go up in transition. Guys that can play this is rare, guys that can play on the power play like Carter McAdam and on the man short. McAdam is a guy that can do it. Eastwood is a guy who could do it. So they have a lot of guys that are able to do provide offense in different ways and also contribute defensively. You're not often going to catch them in scenarios where they have guys that are a liability on either end of the floor. They're very deep. They got a lot of depth. In a tournament like this where you're playing as many as 5 games in 72 hours, let's call it, it can be a real asset. And I think that the Rebels have the makeup of a team that could do damage here and make their first ever Founders Cup potentially ever.
That would be amazing for the Rebels if they could do that. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the Junior Beast Live. We are live inside the Shane Holmes Arena in Genesis Place. If you hear some sounds in the background, their Silvertips are starting to warm up for their 5 o'clock matchup. I don't recall who they're facing first today. I
Shamrocks.
believe it's the Shamrocks, yes. And speaking of the Shamrocks, we might as well make our way over to the south. The Shamrocks 19-1-0 in the regular season, and then sweeping the Mounties 2-0 in the South Finals, ending up with a. Now this I just want to say, shout out to Jason Crooks and his club, because unbelievable stats. Not only 19-1-0 in the regular season, 283 goals for, 116 against for a plus 167 goal differential, 179 penalty minutes all season long, and that is the most disciplined team coming into this tournament. Mo, where do you see the Shamrocks stacking up, and do we potentially see them making the championship game come Monday?
I think that's a good place to start. I mean, we'll kind of maybe go from the back and work our way to the front, so to speak, here with the Shamrocks. I would be surprised if they're not in the final on Monday. I just think that they're too consistent, they're too well coached, and they're too disciplined to see them finishing with a 1-3 or even a 2-2 record through the round robin. I think they'll get their 3 wins and they'll book their spot in the final. I do think that the tournament in general could be pretty tight, so I think there is potential for a 3-way tie. We've seen that in the past, like 2018 there was a 3-way tie, and it was actually the Rebels that got knocked out that way in 2018. It was the Shamrocks and Red Deer who got in via the tiebreak, and the Shamrocks ended up winning. I said earlier that the Rebels are making their 2nd appearance. It's their 3rd. For some reason I forgot about 2018. Which they almost made the final in. But so that's gonna be, that could be a potential
scenario that you see, but I would expect the Shamrocks to be in the final. In a one-game scenario, though, anything could happen. So that's why I take that perspective, as I do believe they'll be in the final. Whether they'll win or not, I mean, that might be a different story. But I do think that they're going to be one of the teams to beat. I think that they're going to be very level-headed. You'll very rarely see them get out of their game. They're very hard to drag out of the way they want to play, which makes them a difficult opponent for anybody, because the best way to win a game is to play the game at your pace and at your style. Something that the Rebels are going to try and do. They're going to try and drag them into a different type game, maybe a more transition-based game, more physical game. Mavericks, very similar style. Silvertips, I haven't really seen too much of the Silvertips this year. I think the Silvertips can kind of play a few different ways, but I don't think the Silvertips will want to play them. We're going to see this game coming up here in a couple hours. I don't think the Silvertips are going to want to play the game on special teams, though. I think they're going to want to play 5-on-5. So I think if that game has more penalties, that probably favors the Shamrocks. But yeah, no, the Shamrocks are going to play their brand of lacrosse for the most part, and they're going to play very level-headed style lacrosse, and it's going to put them in a position to succeed.
And one interesting thing to note going into this tournament, 19-1-0, that one loss was to the Blizzard on their home floor at the Stu Pep. So that could be an interesting championship game matchup if the Shamrocks and the Blizzard do end up meeting and being 1-2 in this round robin.
For the sake of the tournament, I will say it'd probably be nice if the Blizzard weren't in the final, because it makes the final so much more interesting. I know the Blizzard I have absolutely nothing against the Blizzard. I think I have a lot of respect for that organization. They win year in, year out. They're always at this tournament. But last year they were in the final, and at that point you know who's going to the Founders, right?
Yep.
Because that war. So last year it was the Warriors. So whoever they're playing this year would be automatically in. I just think it's just so much more intriguing for everyone involved if it's two Alberta teams in the final.
Exactly. That's to the drama a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll make our way a bit north of Calgary to the Mountain View Mavericks. This is their first ever appearance in the Larry Bishop Memorial Cup. Going 14-5-1, finishing second in the Central, only to the Silvertips, whose record they matched. But the Silvertips had first by way of tiebreak. 183 goals for, 160 against, for a plus 23 goal differential, and again tied 376 penalty minutes throughout the regular season. And then, interestingly, 2-2-0 in the playoffs. They made their way through the chill quite easily, I want to say, in 2 games, and then lost to the Silvertips, who we'll touch on in a few minutes here. -6 goal differential in the playoffs for them, and 67 penalty minutes in the playoffs, which actually is, I believe, quite a few more than the next closest. Yeah, 67 penalty minutes in the playoffs compared to the next closest 44 for the Blizzard in their 2 games, let alone the 4. Where do you see the Mavericks, them being, I believe, the only team in this tournament that had to go through 2 rounds of playoff action?
Yeah, no, the Mavericks are a team that I think are set up to upset some teams. I think that they can show up and beat somebody that you're not expecting and throw the standings out of whack. I don't know if they're necessarily a team that I see contending to win, but I think that they're going to cause a lot of problems. I think tonight is a dangerous game for the Rebels. You've beaten the Warriors, you slayed that dragon, so to speak. Now you're playing a blue-collar team like yourself in the Mavericks that is going to come out. I expect them to come out and match the Rebels' intensity, if not exceed it. And I think it's going to be a difficult game for the Rebels. I think it's going to be a tight game. And at that point, if the Mavericks are able to win that game and suddenly start 1-0, all bets are off. Like they could go on a run. I still think they struggle to score and generate offense a little bit too much for me to want to say that they can go all the way.
Yeah.
But they do profile like a team that is going to cause problems. And I wouldn't want to. I think they might be at the end of the tournament. It wouldn't shock me if like multiple teams are like, that was our most difficult game.
Yeah.
Like we got beat up. You know, we had to exert so much effort in playing them. Their style, they bring a different type of style of game. They ran, and that was wild.
All right. Well, that was interesting. Pane of glass just broke here in the arena. That was interesting, to say the least. The things that happen when you're live, holy.
I don't even know if a ball.
I think a ball just hit somewhere and it just knocked that pane of glass loose. But, well, we'll see what goes on there. Still 2 hours to the first game time. All the Silvertips players that are warming up are swarming over here. So that's going to be interesting. On the topic of the Mavericks, well, we figure out what goes on. We'll update you because this is kind of an interesting situation. The Mavericks definitely play a very physical brand of lacrosse. Oh, yeah, look at that. Just absolutely shattered. The Mavericks play a very physical brand of lacrosse, and I agree, I think it's very similar to the Rebels and how the Rebels play. No other team in the North really has that, I don't think. And I do think that that is going to be an interesting matchup tonight. That game gets underway at 8:15 tonight. Because that is two teams that are playing themselves, essentially. So it will definitely be one heavy-hitting game. And interesting you note about their offense. They have the second lowest goals for in the regular season coming into this tournament. The only team that has less goals for all season is the Silvertips by 22 goals. So definitely something to watch as the tournament rolls on from here inside the Genesis Place. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the Junior Beast Live. We're live inside the Shane Holmes Arena, inside Genesis Place, where the Larry Bishop 2024 will be getting underway in just under 2 hours' time. First matchup of the day, Silvertips Shamrocks, followed up by the Rebels and the Mavericks. That's your day one action. And speaking of the Silvertips, they are the fifth and final team in this tournament, making their way in by way of hosting, essentially, but coming out and becoming the central champions, taking down the Mavericks in 2 games in 2 very tightly contested matchups, I'd say. Those were 2 very good games to watch. No matter who you're a fan of, if you're even a fan of either of them, still good games to watch. Mo, where do you see the Silvertips going in this tournament, having won the Central and being where they are?
Yeah, no, I think that I definitely think that the Silvertips are a team that has a little bit of an ability to play as glass. It almost sounds like ice is being broken up.
Yeah, I think they're just getting rid of the rest of the glass that was hanging out there. So,
but yeah, no, I see the Silvertips as a team that can play a few different ways. I think they're a bit malleable in that sense. Like they have some variance to their game, and they can play a few different styles. I think their biggest strength, obviously, is McDonough and net. He's going to give them a chance to win almost any game that they're playing in. I think that they're going to want to play in lower scoring games in general, though. With their best player, I would say, being their goaltender, I think that they have quite a bit of speed from what I've seen out their back gate. So I think for them to be successful, they're going to want to try and fast break and get 2-on-1s and breakaways and stuff like that and try to generate offense that way. I think that they, playing at home, they should have some energy in here, I hope. The 5 o'clock game is a little weird. Like, usually the host plays at 8, 8:15 in this case tonight, but playing at 5, I don't know, maybe this place is a little quieter. Maybe that helps the Shamrocks. But starting with the Shamrocks isn't great for them. I don't know. I would say
that's a tough matchup to be your opener in this tournament.
Yeah, a team that I think is just gonna come prepared all the time.
Yeah.
If you look, like, they're the only team, at least from what I know of in the North, they're the only team. I don't know how many times the teams in the Central practice, but like they're the only team that practices twice a week now. It used to be every team practiced twice a week. Now teams have gone largely to once a week. The Crew did go back to 2 a week. I think they use one as like a film type session day. But yeah, like that, the Shamrocks are gonna come in having, I'm assuming will be pretty well rehearsed for this game. I think these 2 teams did play once this year.
I'll take a quick look.
And the Shamrocks, I think, won like 13-6 or something like that. So there might be some, I believe there is some familiarity here with how these two teams match up with one another.
Yeah, one matchup, Shamrocks won that game 9-6. That game was inside Plainsman on July 6th.
Right, okay, so 9-6 they won. Yeah, like, wouldn't shock me if you see a pretty, almost a duplicate of that here. Pretty relatively close game that the Shamrocks experience, and that little bit of extra offensive flair and their special teams pull them through. I could see that happening here, but the Silvertips are going to play everybody tight, I would imagine. I don't think you'll see them get blown out by anybody, and I think they're a team that could sneak into the final.
The Silvertips were definitely one of those teams through the regular season where they, and again, like their goals for, goals against, 161 to 126 for a plus 35. Very low scoring games all season long.
Yeah.
That's not even averaging 10 goals a game for or against. So, okay, that was an interesting sound from here in the arena. So the Silvertips, I definitely think, will want to keep those low scoring games, and whether or not they come out on the winning side of those, I think it's just going to come down to essentially their hearts. I mean, this is a team we've seen have strong starts. I mean, they started, 10-1-0 or something like that, and then after that, they just couldn't string anything together, finishing the season 14-5-1. So we'll see if they can regain some of that start of season energy that they had coming in. If you're just tuning in, thanks for tuning into the Junior Beast Live. If you have any questions, definitely throw them in the chat, and we will absolutely answer them, as we have a couple things in chat here. Simon, who actually happens to be calling a couple of our games this weekend. Simon, hyped for tonight's game with the Shamrocks and Tips. Tips have an interesting opportunity here to pull off a crazy upset, and they absolutely have the talent to do it. We have a good one tonight. I fully agree. I mean, we just touched on that. That's going to be a good matchup.
All I would say to Blizzard #1 fan is, come on, man. You're the #1 fan. You don't know that they won last week? The Blizzard won last week. What else is there to say there?
The Blizzard definitely wanted it more than Regina. So Regina just couldn't seem to put anything together against the Blizzard. And, I mean, like we said, they've only really, the Blizzard have
listen, the Blizzard,
made it 1 year.
The Blizzard owned the Kings. That's 4-0 the last 2 years in the playoffs.
Yeah.
In the Kings home barn.
Yeah.
So there's not much else to say. I mean, it didn't shock me. I said on the podcast again, like, it would not surprise me one bit if the Blizzard showed up in Airdrie. That's what we have here. I thought the Kings had sort of figured out some of their issues that had plagued them, but hey, that second game, that Kings offense got shut down 5-4. The Blizzard obviously were able to play their style of game, and the Blizzard, there's no question the Blizzard was stronger defensively. I just thought going into the series that the Kings offense would come through for them after having lost last year, but hey, man, the Blizzard are full marks. Like you said, they've been here every year but one, and it's not a surprise to see them here at all.
Exactly. They have music playing in the arena now. That's gonna be interesting to try and talk over.
Yeah.
Well, how about let's do some first impressions of this barn? Because this is, I know, both of our first times inside the Shane Holmes Arena. It's a nice arena. I mean, you'll see it a little later tonight in just an hour and 50 minutes as the Silvertips and Shamrocks will kick off the Larry Bishop tournament. It's a nice arena in here, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's a good facility, quality facility. I wish this glass wasn't in front of us the way it is. We'll try to extend the camera up and over top of it. But yeah, no, I mean, the floor looks good. Lighting is nice. Hopefully these stands get packed and it's loud in here.
That would be amazing for this tournament. It's going to be great action all weekend long. And looking down the schedule for this weekend, tonight you got the Silvertips and Shamrocks at 5, the Mavericks and the Rebels at 8:15. Rolling into tomorrow, the Shamrocks and the Blizzard will kick off action at 9 a.m. That's an early game, I know. It's not going to be fun. Silvertips and Mavericks at noon, Rebels and Blizzard at 5, and the Shamrocks and Mavericks will finish the day off at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. Sunday, the Silvertips and the Blizzard, 9 a.m. matchup. Rebels versus the Shamrocks at noon. Mavericks and Blizzard at 5, and Silvertips and Rebels will finish off the round robin at 8 p.m. And then, of course, Monday will be the championship game at 1 p.m. And I think we're planning on doing some live content ahead of time. I'm not 100% sure on that. Starting out this stream at about noon. So, keep tuned in. Make sure to follow us Instagram, X, and TikTok now. You can find us on there at CROW LAX TV. So definitely be sure to follow us there. Subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, as we'll be bringing you the content all weekend long, and you won't miss a moment. And of course, you'll be subscribed for future seasons, so you won't miss anything in the future either. See if we have anything else live here. Blizzard #1 fan saying defense wins championships. Well, we have seen it before.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the one thing about the Blizzard is that they're always they have a lot of size.
Yeah.
And it's not bad size, like it's athletic size too. And they have some horses that really do a nice job getting the ball up the floor. They've got bigger bodies on their offense too. That they're very effective in sealing down and creating looks for their outside shooters. And also in the two-man game, setting that up pick or setting that down pick and having that guy roll into the middle too. So, no, the Blizzard are not going to be. They're not going to be anyone's punching bag in this tournament by any means.
No, and quite frankly, we didn't see that last year either with the Blizzard. They came out and were punching some of the bags.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
definitely, the Blizzard deserve to be here. That's for sure. I mean, when you're 4-0 against the Kings in their own barn the last 2 years in the finals, I mean,
yeah. No,
why wouldn't you be here? So.
Yeah, no, that's what makes. I think you'll see it this year more than any other, at least over the last few since COVID, that this tournament presents 5 teams that could all win in any given game.
Yeah.
Didn't have that last year.
No.
Didn't have that the year before even. And I think this year is going to present a much more, let's say, intriguing round robin.
Absolutely, because you look at last year and you had the Outlaws hosting in Beaumont. And, I mean, the Outlaws finished, I think it was last in the North, so it was kind of like you expect them to go 0-4 there.
They did make the playoffs, so the Crew were last. But
okay, so third.
Yeah.
I think they were beaten up in 2 by the Rebels, though, and it was not even a question of who was going to win that series. But this is definitely an interesting one, having both the first and second in the Central coming into this, and obviously with the Silvertips hosting and being champions. That's not something you see all the time. So, definitely looking forward to all the action all weekend long. I'll pass me one of the waters over there, sir. Thank you. As well, if you have any questions, like we said before, make sure to throw them in the chat. We'll be sure to answer them. In the meantime, we do have some announcements to make. And this is regarding the CROW LAX TV award winners for this year. I got the MVP Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Transition Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Top Goalie, and Bench Staff. These are all voted on, I believe, by the management groups of the teams. I'm not sure if that's...
I think each coach or whatever, they nominate one player, like a 1 spot and a 2 spot, and if they select a player from their own team, it has to be in the 2nd spot, so they can't put their own player in the 1st spot. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right, so we got the award winners here for MVP of 2024, Luke Royer. Luke Royer ends up winning MVP. What do you think of that?
Yeah,
having Luke Royer there, I feel like that was kind of one of the givens.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. I think he's a guy that is the heart and soul of that team. Like even in their playoff round, in their playoff series with the Rebels, he's like the only guy that was going inside, taking a beating. He puts his body on the line and he scores a mad amount of goals.
Yeah.
He averaged, I think, a hat trick a game this year. 44 and 15, something like that.
Ridiculous.
So, yeah, so, I mean, he's a guy that just what he means on the floor, off the floor to that team, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Moving to Offensive Player of the Year, I think you already know who that's going to be.
Yeah, that's got to be Fodchuk.
It's Josh Fodchuk winning Offensive Player of the Year.
The fact that Royer got MVP means Fodchuk will get Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Just the stats, right? You don't really need to say too much more. I mean, he spent most of the year with the CROW.
Yeah.
Was putting up points. He had like 80 points with them, and then he went over to the Warriors and did his thing. He contributed offensively. He was scoring goals. He was picking up points, and so I don't think that's a surprise there.
Yeah. Moving to Defensive Player of the Year, we actually have two winners, Miller Scrimshaw and Kyler Andrews, taking Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, a little bit of a co-award there. I think that Scrimshaw, he picked up all that experience last year going with the Warriors to the Founders, got himself a ring, came back and did his thing with the Rebels. He's not like the flashiest guy, but he's very reliable. Very rarely do you see mistakes or breakdowns from him. He has the ability to get the ball up the floor at times as well. He's got good demeanor about him. He doesn't take penalties really. He's disciplined. He plays the game the right way. So I think that's a good nod there. And then Andrews is a guy who is kind of the opposite of Scrimshaw, where he's very he plays the game at 100 miles an hour. Like he runs around very aggressively. He's kind of like an Energizer bunny. It's a guy that I think the players on that team feed off of. Like when he's locked in and he's running around the floor causing havoc, usually it's a sign the Warriors are engaged as a whole. He takes face-offs. He does a little bit of everything for them out the back gate.
Yeah. Transition Player of the Year, Caden Flett, taking Transition Player of the Year.
That might be the easiest one. Even easier, aside from maybe the Offensive Player of the Year once Royer got the MVP, I would say Flett is the given answer there. If you're watching a Warrior game, he's the guy that's doing the heavy lifting all the time, getting the ball up the floor. He has that dynamic where he can provide offense in transition, sound defensively, very good on loose balls. He spent a year with the minors in Junior A, came back down and didn't miss a step. Really added a key piece to the Warriors, and I think maybe that was the biggest aspect of their game that was missing this year.
Yep.
Is that transition game. Like last year they had Carey, they had Anna Farajchuk, they had Lanthier, and this year it was kind of all on Flett to do a lot of that, and it was probably a little bit too much to ask, and a lot of that depth went away, and he still did his thing. He did it, as you can see with this award being handed out, but I think that brings us to that interesting topic of, that maybe where was the Warriors were lacking the most was in that area of the floor, and he just could only do so much.
Yeah. Moving over to Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year, I think it was a landslide victory. Carter Grace taking Rookie of the Year with the Beaumont Outlaws.
Yeah, Carter Grace is a kid that is undersized, and it's never easy coming in at 17 years old and being not just effective, not just playing a role, but being as sort of immersed in the game and as productive as he was not afraid to go into the tough areas of the floor. That's what really stood out to me, is he was always cutting, he was always taking the ball to the net. He was not afraid to shoot the ball. He stayed true to who he was. He didn't try to change his game. He didn't become timid, which a lot of guys, the younger guys, can do. He did a good job of staying with his game, playing confidently, and he's deserving of that award.
It's funny you mentioned timid, because I know he dropped the gloves a couple of times throughout the season too. So definitely not a timid kid, and 4 more years of him, he's gonna tear it up. Top goalie, Tate Pinch, taking the top goaltender.
Yeah, that one I thought maybe would go to McGilvery, but I guess I don't know when those were voted on either. Could have been voted on before the playoff series.
Yeah.
But Tate Pinch, a guy 5 years, with the Warrior program. He's finally graduating, I believe. But you know, I feel bad for him because last year, obviously, he gets hurt in the final in the Larry Bishop against Manitoba, and the Warriors obviously go on to win the Founders. But you know, this year, him and Bialik, I thought both did a really nice job of stabilizing things at times when they were really short. They were playing games during the regular season with like 15 guys, a couple of affiliates, right? Their goaltending, I thought, was pretty good up until the playoffs. And, you know, it doesn't surprise me that he won the award, really. I guess for me it would have been McGillivray, but, you know, he's a guy that deserves credit for all he's done for that program.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you there. And finally, the Bench Staff Award going to the Fort Saskatchewan Rebels. I mean, they're here in this tournament, and their coaching staff takes that Bench Staff Award.
Yeah, you know, I think that is not a surprise. I mean, they had them really prepared for that series with the Warriors. They came in with the right game plan. They played the style of lacrosse that was going to put them in a position to succeed, and they executed it. And I think that's smart. That approach wins them a lot of bonus points, I would say. They were smart enough to recognize this is the way we have to play, and they did it. So they also did, I thought, a pretty good job of pacing themselves throughout the season. Like that Rebels team that you saw in the regular season was nothing compared to what they were in the playoffs. They really saved. It almost looked like they sort of saved up their energy for it, and are peaking at the right time. So, you know, good job to that staff, and fully deserved.
Absolutely. I think the Rebels were a different beast going into that series against the Warriors, just turning it on to a different level like that. Stacy does say the Mavs practice twice a week and film on a third day.
There you go, yeah. So I actually had a feeling they might be a team that would do that. So that's good. Like, I think that's going to give them an advantage, I think, come this tournament. You have your sticks in your hands a little bit more. Might be in a little bit, it helps you with your conditioning, I think. You know, just being on the floor, taking hits, absorbing contact more. So yeah, that could be, it's the little things that make a difference, you know, in tournaments like this. And so I think that could benefit the Mavericks as well.
Yeah, and like the Mavericks wouldn't be here if they weren't a damn good team, that's for sure. And you know, you even saw it, like little glimpses of it against the Silvertips. That second game really could have went either way. I mean, the Silvertips, I think, scored that game-winning goal with like 36 seconds left or something like that. Like, it was such a tight second game that we could have easily had a third game in Genesis Place in that series. So,
yeah, no, I think it was 10-9, right, that game. So it was really tight. Yeah.
Or 9-8 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So I thought that the first game would be a little tighter than it was. Maybe it was a case of the Mavericks being off of that high of knowing they were in. And, you know, they had a pretty hotly contested series with the Chill.
Yeah.
So I think that series did mean more for the Silvertips from a confidence standpoint.
Yeah. Especially with the way they ended their season.
Yeah, they kind of scuffled down the stretch. So them getting that series win, I think, was big for them. But yeah, no, I like I said, I think you got 5 teams here that are all deserving, and I think that they're all going to play at or close to their peak, and it's going to give each and every one a chance to be playing on Monday.
Absolutely. Well, we've hit the 45-minute mark about. We don't have too many questions rolling in, but we'll stay live for a little bit. Make sure to put your questions in if you have any of them. Anything from across Junior B, you know, whether it be north, central, southeast. I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, well,
if you got any predictions or anything like that, throw them in the chat. Let us hear what you see playing out as we approach game time here at 5 o'clock from the Shane Holmes Arena.
Absolutely, and both the most of the Silvertips, well, probably about half their roster's out right now, just taking some reps, warming up for that. Just over an hour and a half away from opening face-off of Game 1, and there's a few Shamrocks that are slowly trickling onto the floor as well. I think we got about 3 of them out there right now, so, you know, they're probably just getting all ready to go, getting all warmed up and everything like that. So if you're in the Calgary or Southern area, be sure to come out to Genesis Place in Airdrie. It's great action all weekend long, and if you can't, well, we'll be bringing them all the games all weekend long here live on CROW LAX TV.
I don't know what, I mean, hopefully we get a few of these, but I'd ask almost for people to put their score predictions in for the 2 games tonight. And I don't know, maybe we could figure out, whoever's the closest, maybe we could figure out like a $20 gift certificate or something like that.
That would definitely be cool. I'm just going to see if we got anything on social media for questions or anything like that. Doesn't look like we have anything at the moment, so that's all right. One thing to mention too, just while we're thinking about it, and thinking of, you know, Carter Grace winning Rookie of the Year in the North and the Outlaws, Jenna Snyder, rookie this year. She played for the Outlaws all season long, and she made the Team Canada roster as well. So congratulations to her. That's definitely a feat.
Yeah, a lot of girls from the area on that team. And you know, you got Ella Royer, you got Brooke Reister, there's a couple others, I believe, as well.
Some of the girls from the Capital Region Saints as well,
yeah,
who we've been broadcasting this season.
Yeah. So, no, that's good to see the local talent being rewarded for all their commitment and time in the sport. Pretty cool honor there.
No, absolutely. Got a few more Silvertips players trickling onto the floor. We'll leave this live for a couple more minutes, so make sure to get those questions in. If you have any questions as well, and you want to send them on social media, always feel free. All the links down below, Instagram, X, and TikTok at CROW LAX TV. Appreciate you guys all tuning in all season long here on CROW LAX TV. Be sure to subscribe if you have not already. Hit that notification bell. You'll be notified every time we go live for the Larry Bishop. Again, 2 games tonight, 4 on Saturday and Sunday, and then championship game 1 p.m. on Monday.
A little bit of, I know I touched on this on Twitter, but a little bit of a primer. The last time the Shamrocks represented Alberta at the Founders, 2019, and they would go on to win the Founders Cup that year. They also represented in 2018. I believe they finished 5th that year. The Rebels never have made it to a Founders. The Silvertips have never won Alberta. I think they may have participated in one in the early 2000s, but my memory, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if they've actually ever played in a Founders. The Mavericks, having only been in the 3rd year in their first trip to the Larry Bishop, have not, and the Blizzard have intermittently gone to the Founders as the Manitoba representative, and they also won the RMLL in 2016. They beat the Chill. So the Chill then went as the Alberta rep, and the Blizzard went as the Manitoba rep that year.
Awesome. Well, it doesn't seem like we're getting too many questions trickling in, so I think that will do it for the Junior Beast Live. So thank you for tuning in. First time ever doing a live podcast. It was definitely a different experience compared to what we normally do, you know. So thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe if you have not already, as we will be live again in just under an hour and a half as the Silvertips and Shamrocks will kick off this tournament, then followed by the opening ceremonies. And then 8:15 will be the Rebels and the Mavericks meeting up for game number 2 of the Larry Bishop Memorial Cup. Well, my name is Keenan. For my co-host Mohammed, thank you for tuning in. And, you know, be sure to follow us on X. Our, what are they called? Handles down below. Mine, Keenan_KM, MJ_9. So be sure to follow us. And, you can always talk lacrosse with either of us on there. And we will see you soon for the Larry Bishop Memorial Cup.